Hello and welcome to this Microsoft D365 Finance and Operations Enterprise Asset Management demo. I'm Philip Carey and I work for EBEX as a consultant inside the Microsoft practice, which is a DXC technology company. Now today's agenda will be looking at enterprise asset management and will be differentiating that to asset management, which is the larger picture. Microsoft D365 covers both, but I'll be mainly focusing on those elements which are to do with how you manage your assets. I'll be also looking at overall process, and the second part will look at a demo. Now I have a picture here of a racing car in the pits, and the reason for putting that there is that in today's assets, they are becoming much more linked in with the Internet of Things, and you need to be able to manage your assets precisely based on data and be able to intervene very quickly to get it up and running in the maintenance windows that you have to complete the task at hand. And that's very much the concept around how enterprise asset management is built. So if we look about what enterprise asset management is, it allows you to efficiently manage and carry out all tasks relating to managing and servicing of all different types of assets. Predominantly, this is focused on the production assets in terms of how it's been designed, although it can deal with other assets such as moving assets and to a degree linear assets. The overall propositions that we're doing is reducing maintenance cost, extending the life of the asset, but most importantly, improving the availability and performance of those assets so you can produce your products. And we also have to get the right balance between how much we do corrective and maintenance from the cost perspective. If we look at the three main elements involved, we're looking at the machine itself, which is where is that machine? How do we manage that from a planning perspective and spares? How are we going to manage the maintenance, preventative, corrective, etc. And then once we've done the maintenance, how do we feed back to get our knowledge base of faults and understand the costs and the history of assets so we can be better in the future. Now, if we look at the overall aspect of enterprise asset management, I've included an aspect of asset management here in terms of understanding what our assets are and what our introduction policies are. Generally, with inside asset management, we need to build a strategic asset framework so we can understand how our assets are affected from risks in terms of reputational risk, financial risk, reliability risk, as well as health and safety. This gives you an overall context by which you then drive the rest of the process of enterprise asset management, which is really the engine which is delivering on that overall promise. So the planned maintenance element in here, once we know what assets are being introduced, generally drives us how we actually want to condition those assets for the environment by which it's working. So how long is it operating? What's our level of service, etc. And how is it interconnected? Where's our risk points? That gives you interventions from a daily, weekly, annual perspective. The reactive is also important because we need to know when things go wrong, how we do recover from that, from both light reactive work as well as major incidents. And then looking at the asset management policy, is we also need to know how we're going to refurbish it, when do we replace it, what's our decision criteria about how we replace that. That tends to be in the asset management arena. Around that, we also need to understand how the business drivers and customer services that we have to let our facilities run in are going to perform and how they can change with time. On top of that, we need to build up this asset knowledge base. So how do we get information that's happening in there so we can improve our planned and reactive maintenance? The maintenance execution is very important about whether we do it or subcontract it, whether you use mobile, how we can get the information and the timeliness of communication from assets through the system and into the individuals on their laptop or a mobile device, and then get back into the system to make sure that asset is back up and running as quickly as possible. And then finally, we need to make sure that it needs to go to the back office so that we have an integrated approach. And asset management is very much a very integrated process, as we'll see later. The main elements of work that you do with inside asset management is split into three areas. We have the reactive side, which is from a simple spill to a complex incident. We have the planned, which you know that you're going to do. So that will be in terms of your inspection rounds, your service intervals, or corrective maintenance that you've discovered from your reactive side. And then there's the bigger work, which involves either new installations of work, refurbishments, or dealing with a possession shutdown, which either happens planned or unplanned, to get as much maintenance work as you can done. Now, from a business perspective, you really want to be in the middle area and have less in the reactive side. And the major side is really just about the continual improvements, about how you're going to manage the bigger tasks. This is a main section that we would look at your asset maturity to see how close you are to this particular model. In terms of how maintenance works, then we have an overall flow where we create an order, we schedule it, we execute it, we debrief it and close it. But there is a demand phase on top of this. And what happens is that preventative maintenance drives your orders, but so does reactive. But once those have been created, we have to work out how we're going to get the stuff, if we need parts, onto the line so we can give it to the engineers to fix, what things we're going to subcontract, and if we do add and remove assets, how we can maintain that overall structure. We also need to close the job, and then once we've closed it, we need to look at any follow-on work and to see how that affects the preventative maintenance plan. We can also include this, big up more reactive in terms of counters, which we can use the Internet of Things to drive. And finally, there's another set of processes underneath to pull it all together. So that's the overall process about why we're doing it and the functions. How do we set the process up? Well, first of all, we need to build together how we've constructed those assets within inside the business. So we'd use functional locations to say where they are. So if I have 3 lines, I may have 3 functional locations and subdivide that line down into the individual elements where those assets fit. And that basically gives us a positional point about where those assets are. And then we can put the families of assets underneath it. So this may have a machine, an engine, a gearbox, a motor. Some of those can be rebuildables, other ones we sort of take out and put back in again. The other thing that we also need to understand is that we can also do maintenance against a location. So we can do sort of a maintenance across the whole line as well as an individual asset. Now, when we carry out asset work, there are 2 types. There's reactive work, which can come from either you spot something, so you say, I think things need to be fixed, or they're sensor based. The second thing is that we can do it from interval rounds, so intervals and rounds where we set an interval based on time or by a counter to go and create a particular type of job when that interval has happened. And those are particular job types that we set up, and they have resources and spares. And what the whole of this process does is it produces a plan or a calendar of events that you're going to be able to do based on that process, which can be converted into works orders, either manually or automatically, and then given to the individual engineers. So that's the overall process by which we're sort of pulling things together. There's an aspect of particular assets that we need to be very focused to build the knowledge base up from that. So we've got a set of processes in there to build up, how it's structured and what processes we use and how we maintain it and where it fits with inside the factory, as well as we have all the follow-up tasks. When we carry out work, we can get information on what faults have happened, what's it's cost us, how much time it's stopped production. So it gives us a good history to then make sure that we can take that learning into the business and continually improve. We also have to do the work, and there's 3 types: planned, reactive and corrective. But how you schedule to people can either be done by a planner, giving it to a particular person. You can go to a group and there's a consensus, you've got a list and you just create the work. Or you've got a pool where you've got a set of jobs and you're just working to clear down that work pool. If you've got on the manufacturing side of it, you've got an actual production stop, you may have a period where a machine is down, therefore you need to get as much work done in that period that is existing to go and fix that while your opportunity is hot off the press, as it were. The other way is to just do standard break fix where an engineer has been allocated and goes and fixes it. And the third type is an inspection, where you're going out, seeing what happens, but you then may either raise work requests or work orders to go and fix what you've seen. This is a general flow for preventative maintenance, which is really about defining the strategy, creating the maintenance itself, then generating the orders, then the proposals, and then generating the orders, and then going to the bottom part, which is the execution. So that's very much about preparing what you need to do, to schedule it to individuals, and then go through and execute it and close out that work order. So underneath here are all the basic aspects that we need, and we'll show you that in the actual demo. Similarly, for preventative maintenance, there tends to be a process by which you create a request, and that can come from anyone, how you review it, and then if you need to carry out work, you create a work order. And then there's a whole process about how you prepare that work order, schedule it, and then go and execute it, very much as you did from a normal work order. But you get the data coming back from two particular perspectives. And then we've got the overall process for the integration side. We are very heavily integrated to warehousing for all the spares. We've got links into procurement to buy parts that we need to. We can develop suppliers which can either come from a catalogue, an external catalogue, or we can use vendor managed inventory. We've got finance, so we can look at this from either individual project level, if you've got one project for maintenance or several projects, or if you do maintenance on behalf of other people, we can manage that whole process. And also very much linked into production, so we can know when production stopped, when we can manage any tool preparations that either happen between shutdowns, or whether there's counters within inside the plant, which then drive the maintenance plan itself. And just two other sort of areas. We also have abilities for counters. Just explaining this one is that if you do have a particular machine, we can actually link it to basically a production order which has a resource to it. So we know that we can produce a production plan as well as a maintenance plan, all linked together by a counter. And what happens is that as the production order is created, it creates hours used and production volume created. Those can go up to counters, which can then be analysed to either generate the maintenance based on what has actually happened inside production. So it's a very seamless sort of process, and we're just basically running jobs to update the production orders, to update the counters in the maintenance, generate the plans. And the final area is that we can do vendor managed inventory. Therefore, if you do have inventory which you want the supplier to manage, this particular scenario shows an order coming through where you need a part. You can identify the part and then pick it up from stores to go and fix it and install it. You can then take that part back into quarantine to see whether it's your fault or whether it's still under warranty. But it also can generate because it's a vendor managed part, we can automatically generate the payment to the supplier for the part that you've used. And then we can also trigger the replenishment process for those parts to make sure that you're always stocked and you don't stock out. So that's really the end of this particular presentation. We're going to show you this now as a demo, but just to remind you that this is enterprise asset management. It's integrated with inside the whole of the business to give you the asset management as well as the enterprise asset management process. It will deliver you great benefits in terms of reduced maintenance costs, extended life, availability, and the right balance of maintenance and planned and corrective maintenance. And it is a relatively easy, simple system to implement and get value from. For more information about asset management and asset management thinking, as well as other videos in this series, please use the link below. Thank you.